And Liz, you want to introduce Chris?
So as I mentioned before Chris got on, Chris is unfortunately retired. Well, not quite yet, but this is her last month. And she's worked in Staten Island for 20 plus years, and has done the front door for quite a few years. She's one of the most knowledgeable people that I know on the subject. So Chris Grover, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Right. So as Liz mentioned, yes. So full disclosure, even though I guess the last time I was on Zoom, I must have had that set up. I don't want to mislead anybody. I am actually leaving state service. Yesterday was I'm actually quote on vacation right now, but I'm done at the end of February. I have been with the state almost 34 years. So I'm bowing out at this point, but I'm not fully sure who the audience is, and that would help me in this conversation.
Okay.
Because I'm over region,
but I kind of run it,
which is all New York City. So, but Liz, you had mentioned there might be Long Island families on this call. Okay, so I'm gonna preface some things in and out, because some things, you know, New York City, the 5 boroughs is what I had jurisdiction over. So I was the front door lead for all of that. So as Liz mentioned, the OPWDD has shifted in the last couple of years. And at first, even those of us who worked there were like, why can't families just put in for eligibility? That stinks. They should be able to do it for themselves. But in hindsight, it really was a good thing, because what happened over the years is the families would get all their documents and they put it in for eligibility. They talk to us in the front door, and then we go, okay, we can't do anything with you till you get hooked up with at the time it was an MSC or CCO. And then some of these families would just fall off the radar and get lost and get overwhelmed, and we'd never hear from them again. So the way that the state decided to structure this over the last few years is not meant to torture anybody. It's meant to actually help families in the long run. That way, from get-go, you're working alongside with an entity that's going to hold your hand through the whole process and get you through. I just want to I'm sorry, I need a water bottle. So that is what happens. Now, I had shared with Liz and Mike, and I can share my screen, the welcome packet that the 5 boroughs gives out. Many of those documents are statewide standard documents. So if you called Long Island, you'd get a bulk of the same, but we each fine tune it with things that are unique to our worlds. So what the other thing that's happening, which makes this conversation a little awkward, is and you'll hear many people say it if you talk to anyone, did you go to an info session? Have you been to the OPWDD info session, etc.? So the documents I'm going to show, or they'll be shared after, we'll figure out the best way to navigate this conversation, is going to give you instructions on signing up for an info session. Those info sessions are WebExes. They're held every single week. I'm pretty sure this entire audience is English speaking, but we do have monthly Spanish and we have quarterly Chinese, and then any other language we could do one-on-one. So if you have anyone else, we absolutely can honor all languages, but they have to be set up. But OPW is actually also we're having this conversation at a time we're shifting away from that. So the last time I checked, they really are shooting for February 1st launch of basically self-serve videos. So instead of you having to sign up for WebEx and go and sit in this WebEx and be a part of a 2-hour conversation with people speaking to you and sharing PowerPoints, you would help yourself to videos that make sense for your situation. And it's not going to be it's not basically just a recreation of the info sessions that we have. They're going to be unique to different subjects. Here's a vignette on getting eligibility. Here's a vignette on CCO. Here's a vignette on adult services. So which right now they cover in the entire conversation. So if I'm a parent of a 6-year-old, I don't want to hear about employment, but you're going to sit through that conversation because that's a part of the info session. If I'm a parent whose kid actually was made eligible, but I'm just kind of getting back into it, I never really pursued it, I don't have to hear about the eligibility. This way, it's meant to be tailor-made and be self-serve. So again, it's awkward because what I'm going to share with you is the schedule. They only have this schedule running through February 6th because they intend to launch these self-serve videos. Like I said, I haven't really seen it yet. It's January 24th and they haven't made the announcement yet, so they may end up extending the video. But basically, what we can share with you, it's really just a link to the website. And I would imagine that link would also bring you to if they flip over to self-serve. But on the OPWDD website is something called Getting Started. And that's where you would get started. So that's the info session, which I do think, even if we did launch February 1st, it's going to take a while for everyone in the world to get that in their heads. We've been preaching info sessions for, what, Liz, 15 years now, at least. So everyone you talk to is probably going to ask, did you go to an info session? Did you go to, and that might change. So it's just going to be a PR need on our end, on OPWDD's end, to get that out. So basically you would attend an info session, and that's meant to give you your baseline knowledge on what is needed for eligibility. What are the next steps? And the other thing you're going to do is contact the DDRO, especially in Long Island. You're going to, because we have different points of entry. Long Island, definitely their front door is going to talk to your families and sign you up maybe on the phone. I can't speak for them. It's a little different than how we do it in the city. In the city, we're going to say, did you go in info session? Yes, I did. Okay, now I need you to talk to a care manager, a CCO, care coordination organization, or just to confuse you guys more, we have what's called service access agencies. And you'll see that verbiage in the paperwork you give us. And the service access agencies are providers that we contract to help you through this process as well. So you have two points of entry you can utilize. So we have 2 sets. And again, mine is tailored for New York City. My service access agency list would be completely different than what Long Island would have. So I'm only, I only have what I have for the city, and they're per borough. Because that's how our contracts are. They're very borough specific. It's just the way the money runs. So on our service access agency list, you'll see who serves the Bronx, et cetera, by borough. So when I logged on, Liz was talking a little bit about eligibility. I'm not the eligibility expert. I can give you the broad strokes on that. Again, that has to be submitted by a CCO or a service access agency. And they're going to ask you need a current psychological with adaptive testing. You need a current social history within the last year, and a medical within the last year. If your child is on the spectrum, more than likely, you're also going to have to supply some kind of autism rating scale. And these are things that you may get through the Board of Ed. I would hope you could get through the Board of Ed. But again, one of the attachments I have in our book, our zip file, is clinical suggestions, clinics you can go to, as well as providers we contract. So our list, I don't know what makes sense here. If I don't want to I think I would just talk, and if people have specific questions, maybe I can bring things up. But the list I have, clinic guide rather, I should say, is divided up by Medicaid, people who have Medicaid and or health insurance. And most of the time, private health insurance doesn't pay for this kind of stuff. We're very well aware of that. So we have, again, that word contract, we have contract providers we pay to do testing. So we divide it up into Medicaid and non-Medicaid. Then you would have people you can use for contracts, and that's what they do all the time. You should always start though with the Department of Ed. You don't want to put your child through extra testing. If they've done it already, don't run to get testing. That's usually when I have the opportunity to talk to a parent on the get-go. Don't do that to yourself or your child. Get what you have from the DOE and let's present that to eligibility. Your CCO will maybe even know off the top of their head whether it makes sense to submit this or maybe go, but let the committee do their thing and then ask for what they need, so just to let them with their expertise.
Chris, I just want to interject for a second about the eligibility process, because that was also one of the things that I did for so long. So I have a little more knowledge. It is a 3-step process. So the first process is where you're submitting in the very basic, as Chris is talking about, the psychological, psychosocial, and the physical. If your child is, as Chris mentioned, autistic, you may have seen a neurologist, so you may have that report. You're going to add that in there. That's a good supporting document. Supporting documents can also be very helpful. If you have them, great. If you don't, as she said, it's very conceivable that, the eligibility team will evaluate. They know what they're doing. They know what their parameters are. If they think that your child does not meet it, clearly doesn't meet it, they'll let you know that. Or if they feel they may need additional information, they're going to ask for it. Or it will go to second step, where it is then reviewed by a committee of professionals, psychologists, social workers, sometimes MDs, depending on the individual's eligibility status. And if that doesn't work and they still haven't come to a conclusion, then it would go to third step, which is a statewide committee of other professionals, psychologists, medical doctors, social workers, etc., that will then review and make a final determination. So there's many steps to it, but a great majority are made eligible on the first step. But supporting documents outside of the psychological, particularly in the case of autism, is always helpful.
The
Go ahead, Chris.
the other thing I want to mention too, if your child is young, very young, the committee has the option of granting what's called provisional eligibility. So what does that mean? That's our way of saying we're going to get them in. They have the ability to apply for services, but we want to look at them again before the age of 8. At 8 and over, we're basically yes or no. Before that, the committee has the discretion of giving provisional. So the services that you may apply for are the same as anyone who's 15 and has what full eligibility. That's not a real term, but that's what we kind of always say. The one thing too, and this is something that I'm being very cautious in how I say this, I'm being very cautious not to use the word entitle, because our service delivery system is not an entitlement system. The Board of Ed is an entitlement system. You are entitled to an education, etc. I'm not the expert on that, but that isn't time. Our service delivery system has caveats and there's determinations made based on the determination of need, etc. So it's not always black and white, but eligibility out of the gate, if you get provisional or full out eligibility, certainly things called family support services, which are not Medicaid driven dollars, that's something you have an ability to apply for. Those are things that we've called like family reimbursement. We do have, and that's what I was saying earlier, we do have some contracts who help with the evaluation. So that obviously would be before eligibility. We also have something called non-Medicaid service coordination that might be able to help you. Things like that. That's the service access agency. So I'm going a little off script, but I wanted to get that in about the provisional. And just if your child is provisional, let's say they're provisional and they do get authorized services and you're rolling along in life, maybe they got provisional at 4, your care coordinator should be keeping this on their radar, but you should not take you by surprise that at 7.5, we're going to need a whole new packet on them to then make a decision whether we're going to continue the eligibility and continue the services. So that's something that's hugely important just to keep in mind. And that ability to give the young guys that is because, you know, we're not going to commit yes or no to someone so young. Maybe the interventions could help them, just like early intervention for the little guys, and then it cuts off, and then perhaps we could swoop in. I lost my train of thought. So you go to an info session, you hook up with a CCO, you hook up with or service access agency, you apply for eligibility. Then what? Maybe you're a family, and I think I'm kind of, based on what Liz explained to me, the nature of this group, I think all of you probably have primary health insurance that's not Medicaid. So we're talking a lot, we're using that term Medicaid, and some of you may be thinking, well, my kid doesn't have Medicaid, I don't apply for Medicaid. If you apply for what we call HCBS waiver services, and the info session will explain what that's in more detail, and we determine that that is something your child needs, you can get Medicaid because of that. Not you, I'm sorry, your child will get Medicaid. And then there's an application done through your CCO, and it discounts parental income and assets. If ever, and this is again, whenever I get to talk to parents, because there's some bad information every once in a while flowing out there, you do not ever have to go down to a Medicaid office and apply. If someone tells you that you have to apply and get denied, that is bad information. That would be handled through your CCO taking. If you could get Medicaid already, you'd have Medicaid already. I guarantee you that. So don't go down to the Medicaid office. You don't have to do that. Let the process happen organically. And if we approve your child for a waiver service, then your CCO will apply for Medicaid for the child.
Chris, do you mind just repeating? So the process you're talking about, what is it called to get Medicaid like separate?
Our terminology is called parental deeming. But again, this is organic to OPWDD. If you walked into a Medicaid office and said, hey, I want to apply for Medicaid because my kid is eligible for OPWDD, they wouldn't even know what you're talking about, and you would get denied. And that's why it's such a specialty way of funneling into the Medicaid system. And again, my home base is New York City, but I know it's the same with Long Island. It has to be handled a very specific way, and your CCO has to do it for you. So that would only happen if your child gets approved after eligibility, if you apply for a waiver service and the DDRO determines your child is in need of whatever that waiver service is.
So this is after someone's, like, say someone started the OPWDD process with their child, if they've been determined based on their income to be submitted for this.
No,
No.
income has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought that's what you're saying. I just want
Eligibility. So OPWDD eligibility has nothing to do with income. It has to do with your child's disability.
but the Medicaid part, what?
Medicaid would be so again, if your household income is such that you qualify for Medicaid, you should be applying for Medicaid regardless. If we determine, DDRO determines your child needs certain services that are Medicaid funded, your CCO will work with you to apply for Medicaid. You're not going to the Medicaid office at all.
And the family's income is waived. No one looks at the family's income at all. So I think that's where
I misheard something earlier. I thought I heard something that had to do with eligibility, but I misheard.
the individual has to be eligible.
Yeah.
So that's the first step, right? The eligibility is done. Assessments are done to determine needs and strengths. And then if it's determined that the individual can benefit, as Chris is saying, can benefit from waiver services such as respite or what's the other one, Chris?
Community rehabilitation.
Community rehabilitation, if they're
Mhm.
older, day hab.
Yeah.
If that's seen, then the CCO, the care coordinator, will then make the application to the Medicaid office for this special waiver to get
Okay.
that person Medicaid on themselves, not the rest of the family, just the individual with the disability.
Right.
Okay,
And that's how the services are paid for.
got it. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
just want to
The,
take notes out.
and again, I don't want to confuse it. This is a real specialty topic. It does not waive, and I don't totally know my audience. It doesn't waive the child's income and assets. We certainly have had scenarios where the child, for the circumstances of the parent, is receiving a Social Security check, disability, whatever that might be. And that could play a factor in. And these are very specialty conversations. I don't want to get too far off track, but I just want to leave you with this process we discussed, the parental deeming. It waives parental income and assets. It does not waive the child's income and assets. And we do have situations where kids have income. That's a whole nother conversation you might have with a special needs attorney. You might want to do it in a trust. Out of my league for, don't want to go there.
So before you move on, I just want to just reinforce one of the things you were saying. I was that person that you just described. I was walking around the Medicaid office and nobody had any idea what a waiver was, what OPWDD was. I obviously had gotten some bad information, but like I said, my Michael is an adult now, but at the time, you just brought that up, and I couldn't think my audio was off because I laughed out loud. I know it's a serious topic, but I'm laughing because
Right.
I'm there wandering around the office, going like, so where do I see about this? And like, basically, get out of here. That's basically
Right.
what.
Right.
But along those lines, that's where like what we're doing here today cuts down on that bad information. That's why, like, when people come and seek information from our group, I never just say like, oh, we'll do this or do that. I generally send out an email to the entire group, and then I hook them up with somebody else that is much more of an expert in that area. Like you said, the information that I have from 10 years ago may not be as accurate. I'm learning so many new things that you're talking about, these videos and everything. So that's great. I'll stop now. I just wanted to just add that in. It's pretty fun.
Okay. So Liz, help me out. Where am I going in this conversation? We've covered.
So you've covered eligibility. We've talked about assessment and needs and strengths, the CAS and whatever the forms are now. I'm not sure. So now the CCO is going to the care coordinator, then with the front door works on different waiver programs, right?
Okay,
Waiver
right.
services.
Something just happened on my computer. Sorry, guys, hold on. So basically, not everyone who comes to us necessarily needs certain services. We don't want to say that that's always the path that you're going to take. And I'm going to be honest, again, I'm not the I work very closely, or worked past tense, with Jeff Ortiz, who was my equivalent in Long Island. What Long Island can offer families that is not Medicaid driven is completely different than what New York City has. So a lot of the New York City families go down the waiver path because most of our services are Medicaid dollars. Long Island has a huge amount of non-Medicaid respite type programs that they try and gear families to. Everyone's path is different, and I'm not going to torture you all with the history on that. It's just the way, the way monies came down from Albany and the way DDROs at the time, we used to be all our separate little districts, chose to funnel the money. And the city kind of converted a lot of our non-Medicaid things into Medicaid programs to stretch the dollars. That's just the way it played out. So a lot of what we have are a lot of Medicaid programs, whereas Long Island has more of these family support non-Medicaid program. So you might have a completely different conversation if you're a Long Island family with the front door, as opposed to one of the families in the 5 boroughs talking to our front door, because of the different things we have to offer. And that's just the reality of the situation. So either way, you're going to end up having a conversation once you're eligible, whether provisional or full. You're going to have a conversation with what's called a front door facilitator. You might have already been talking to that person all along. And now they're going to say, hey, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith, let's talk about what your child really needs and what we can potentially give. Maybe his or her needs are fully satisfied with these non-Medicaid things. And you might say, but my care manager told me about X, Y, and Z. Well, let's look into that. And if your care manager would then make a formal application to us for certain services that our front door facilitator would, there's a lot of paperwork involved. We'd make sure all the paperwork's right. And then we have a quality review team that would look at that request and make a decision on, are we authorizing the service? How much are we authorizing, et cetera, et cetera. It's a process. I think something came up in the chat. I don't know if you guys are monitoring that. So we want to take that. Should I open it?
You want to take the question you're saying now?
I don't know how we're doing it.
I'll just read it. Hello, first time attending. My son has been diagnosed as autistic. He is in kindergarten in Westchester County. What should I do first in this process?
Okay, so the first thing is an info session, which right now that's still what it is. So let's. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to close the chat. I almost left.
Before that, Chris, what about now? One of the changes that you had mentioned to me was now you have to call the 866 number. You can't just call your district, right? You can't call Hudson Valley DDRO if you live in Westchester. Now you have to call that 866-946-9733.
Right. I'm so distracted because I can't close this thing that's up on my computer. There is. I mean, if you happen to have an old listing for the phone numbers, this person who wrote in, they said they're attending kindergarten in Westchester. I'm assuming you also live in Westchester. So we have in what OPWDD decided to do, if you go on our website, I'm going to try and bring that up. I don't have a second screen here today, so I'm going to do this. Just let me get in here and then we're going to. So let me get back to the Zoom. And Mike, how do I share? Here we go. Share screen. Okay, hold on. So this is our website. I mean, I know I'm semi-retired, but I would be very vocal. Our website's not the easiest one to navigate. It's not, I'm not a fan of it. But I can tell you, if you didn't have a link, if you went in here blind and had no idea what to do, if you go to Access Supports, you hit Get Started. And this front door, that's our term for people coming in new. Front door. This is the front door. Let's enter here. And welcome to the front door. How do I begin? We used to have like 20 numbers here for each county. They've brought it down to one number. So you would call that number no matter if you lived in Schenectady or Brooklyn. And they would triage the call basically and get you to your right area. And then you can see it talks about eligibility. So right now, and if I keep going down here, attend an info session. They still have the info session information up. If I decided I wanted to go to the one, I can't, you guys, I have a little box up. I can't see the date because I'm blocked, but if I wanted to log this one, I would just click on it and I would register here. I'm sorry, you guys are blocking my thing. I can't move you to say, there you go. You would, it's just that simple. You would click on this link and it would take you further. I don't think it's that complicated. Register. And then you would fill it in. But that's our front door. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't know what this is going to look like when we switch over to the self-serve videos. But this is, if we go all the way back to the OPWDD homepage, this is, whoop, I went too far back. This is our homepage. Access support. I want to access support. So I want to get started. I want to enter the front door. And this is my phone number. So now I'm going to show you guys. I'm not sure if I just open up a PDF. Are you guys looking at a PDF? Now,
We look at begin.
Wherever you go.
So we're still seeing the actual web page.
Okay, so I think I have to stop and reshare. So what I have in the this information I shared with Mike and Liz ahead of time, our welcome packet almost has, I'm gonna be blunt, I think it's almost too information. I think it can be a little overwhelming to families sometimes. So let's look at some of that, because some of this, whether you're in Long Island or Westchester, it's going to be the same, as long as they're following what Albany had asked. So we have a family support services. This is just an overview. This is what I talked about. Some of these are non-Medicaid. So just by having eligibility, you might be able to access these. Each county is different on what they offer under family support services. And that's because of the money, the way the monies are contracted. This is our big old front door access to services. Again, a lot of information. Can be overwhelming. Don't overwhelm yourself. Little by little, go through it. But everything we're talking about and everything you would hear in the info session is captured here. It breaks down the services that you're going to hear about on the info line, because it's a lot of information you're going to get. So it's going to explain this. The one thing I will say, they didn't edit, and please don't get upset with us if we turn you away. This access to service books, which they haven't edited, does talk about you perhaps applying for eligibility yourself on behalf of your child. We're going to tell you, I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I need to get that from a CCO for what we talked about earlier. So it can be a little deceiving, but there's an access to service book. This one explains what care management is. We keep hearing that term, CCO, Care Coordination Organization. This is a little flyer about what a CCO is. And when I'm sharing my screen, here we go. This is important because this shows statewide, because now I realize I have people in Westchester here. If you go to this flyer, excuse me, by county, it shows which CCO serve your county, and those phone numbers are on the top here. So my friend who was from Westchester, who I don't know off the top of my head, well, it's 3, 4, 5. That's Advanced Care Alliance, Care Design, Life. See, these guys don't serve New York City, and I know they don't serve Long Island either, or Tri-County. This last column, Partners Health Plan, that is only for adults who have Medicaid and Medicare. So unless you're in that, and I can never remember, I always get that wrong. I don't know if Liz, you can help me if it's 18 or 21 for that. But that's its own little category. It's more of a managed care system. It's a very positive thing, but if your child is still a child, that's not going to be good. So this flyer is helpful because it shows every county and who serves it. This,
Chris,
go ahead.
just going along with the CCOs, I always find this very confusing. So when you're calling the 800 number, the 866 number, are they going to guide you to the CCO, or they're going to send you to your local DDRO, who's then going to say, here's the list of the CCOs, you need to contact them in order to move forward with eligibility?
They're going to guide you to your local DDRO for you to hook up with that local front door. So that's just the way they decided to navigate it.
Because the key really is with that CCO and getting someone to work with you. And I've always felt that it's really important that you develop a rapport with your care coordinator. If the first one, you don't get that, warm and fuzzies with them, because it's really important. They're going to help you determine the needs of your child and help you ascertain services. So if you can't develop a good rapport, go to another one.
And that's a really good point, Liz. And you're absolutely right. When I have the opportunity to talk to families who are just starting this crazy road, I usually try and tell them, take good notes, whether if you're a tech person in your phone, buy yourself a clean notebook. I called advanced care on this date, left a message. I called Tri-County, because you're going to quickly start talking to many people. When they call you back, you're going to say, who are you? You're from where? And so you do have to put some energy into it. And I know you're all tired, and I know you're all really, it's a lot going on in your lives, obviously, but it's something that you're going to have to be a little disciplined for yourself to help your child. So, and Liz, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's instinct. Talking to other families, this seems like a support group. What was your experience, etc. So that's the CCOs. Now, again, if you're a New York City family, we have that big cheat sheet. This is the one from central office, but this is our own cheat sheet for the 5 boroughs. So it's a little more personalized. So instead of just having the main number, you can call this person, director, that person. And we even have, for some of them, they gave us people per borough who handle it. So this was something we developed for Region 4, which is all 5 boroughs, that you could work with, that might help you a little along in the process than just getting the main number. This next document, this is unique to New York City. If you're in Long Island, some of the Queens things might be able to go into, that might be logistically make sense for you as well. Even Westchester, maybe some clinics in the Bronx. But these were for people who maybe needed testing. We have this broken up into resources. The first half is for persons with Medicaid or insurance that would pay for it. And then this is without Medicaid. So these are our contracts. So we're very specific. Like, if I didn't have Medicaid and my Blue Cross Blue Shield isn't going to pay for an ADOS and an autism rating scale, we might be able to do that through a contract. You'd have to contact AHRC, and we show which borough, because they're only contracted per borough. So AHRC actually is 5 boroughs. CARES will only serve Queens families, etc. So that's how we have this divided up for families as a guide. This is just
so again, Chris, so you're saying that the front door would be able to give you that information, or your care coordinator, once you've established a care coordinator, would be able to give you where you can go to get the test needed for eligibility, and you don't have the Medicaid.
Right. Well, we share this with families as part of the welcome package.
Okay, so it would be the DDRO.
This we share with them. I can't speak for what Long Island or Westchester or anyone else does. This is something we developed. We just found it very helpful because we do get a lot of calls, people looking for clinical resources. But again, as we said earlier, take a pause. Don't run out and get testing until you have that conversation with your CCO and they see what you already have. They're very experienced in this process. Nobody needs an IQ test one after the other. It's not even good for the child to be tested that much. Let them see what you have first. And then if you need, you do have this as a resource, again, covering the 5 boroughs.
Chris, kind of question, you mentioned non-Medicaid services quite a bit. Who pays for those?
The non-medic, that's 100% is in our world, the terminology is 100% state dollars. It's out of the OPWD budget. It's family support services.
So that could be reimbursement dollars. Sometimes there's camp, right, Chris? I can't remember family support.
Reimbursements changed a lot. I'm out of that loop now. I'm not comfortable speaking because the contracts have changed a lot. There's like support groups, there's recreational tickets, like wrestling tickets and things like that. Sometimes transportation is available, like single trips and things like that. I'm not comfortable talking about that because I'm not the expert. That would be, if we go back here, the first flyer I showed, this is the family sports services overview. So this is what you might be able to access. And again, it's very specific not even per region, but per county. Yeah.
County.
Borough in our area. So going back through this welcome packet, this is the front. So everything we said, we kind of like repeat ourselves in different ways over and over in what we hand out families. So this is the front door. So this is basically everything we talked about, right? So you're going to contact the OPWDD. That's that main number if you didn't know who. Or I'm giving you this a welcome packet for New York City families. Then you do an info session. Then you have eligibility determination. And then they're going to assess your child. And then there's going to be a plan development. What they don't put heavy in here is the part about a CCO, because they're very much a part of the plan development and accessing services. But this is just another pamphlet explaining the front door. I'm trying to get to the one I want to see. Oops. This is just our, the info sessions. They're only out to February 6th. There's one I feel like I'm missing. Did I not open it up earlier? I'm sorry, guys. I'm flipping through quick because I'm trying to find one. I can't get to, let me go. Oh, I'm so upset because I had this all opened. I got to open this. I didn't have this one open. Sorry, guys. I'm going to reshare it right now. It's part of the welcome packet. I tried to prep this beforehand. Okay, this would be in the welcome packet too. This is kind of a little cheat sheet for yourself to help organize yourself. So for us in the 5 boroughs, we put numbers for each of our main front door lines for the 5 counties. You might have also the name of a specific human who might have given it to you. In Long Island, they might put your actual front door facilitator after the first call. We have the main numbers so we can help and redirect you. So you would check off, did I call the front door? Did I get my welcome packet? And you could this is just something they develop, but here, right here, front and center, you're going to choose a care coordination organization or service access agency. Make notes. Establish eligibility, make notes. Attend a session, make notes. The assessment of service needs, that's something that's done. I didn't go into that at all. You will get a lot of phone calls out of the gate. Once your child's eligible, you're going to get calls from your front door facilitator. You're going to get calls from an entity called Maximus, whether you're a child or an adult. That's a mandatory assessment that's done. They probably go into more details in the info session. I always forget which is the kids and which is the adults. It's either CAS or a CANS, but it's part of the kids. I never get it right. The CANS is right. CANS is the kids, CAS. Either way, you're going to get a call from them. You're going to get a call from a front door facilitator. You're going to be talking to your CCO. we've heard, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say complaints. It's not fair to all of you from families, because it can be overwhelming. All I can do is apologize in advance for that. These are sort of necessary steps to move things along. Those assessments are something that's looked at when determining service needs. There are certain services, depending on your child's scenario or your adult child scenario, that absolutely things related to behavioral needs it's needed for everybody, but they play a very heavy role in being able to access certain things that we may be able to offer the person with the disability. So it can be a little overwhelming to you guys. You know, all of you, I don't know if you're all brandy new or if maybe you're a little further down the line. As frustrating as it can be for our staff, from the state end, what I can tell you is one of the things that we hear a lot from our staff is nobody answers, right? I don't answer my cell phone if I don't know who the caller is. I barely listen to voicemails if I didn't know who the caller is. As you're going through this process, we're going to have to ask you to be sensitive to that, because we may be trying to get a hold of you, and it may go to voicemail and you may not answer it. Because these are the things I'm telling you from my experience in the state. We've closed out files because we've left 7 messages and the family hasn't responded to it. And I get it, we're overwhelming you. You just spoke to Maximus, and then we call you and you tell us, I already spoke to you. Well, you didn't. You spoke to those people. So we can be a little overwhelming. I apologize to all of you that. That's why, back to the conversation we had earlier, to just kind of make notes who you spoke to, when you spoke to, and what the purpose of that call was. And again, what Liz had said, that warm, fuzzy feeling, that's a very good way of putting it, because you need that care coordinator. You need someone you can rely on to help you when it gets overwhelming, and to guide you. Why am I doing this? And who am I talking to for this? These are all the things we have to do, ultimately with the end goal of getting services that make sense for your child, and seeing where that goes.
Just one introduction here, going along with those assessments. And I think this is really important. We all want to paint the best picture of our child. We want our child to be the shining star. However, when it comes to these assessments, you need to be very honest. If your child, you can't, I'm just giving you an example from way back when. Your child is 13 years old and they say, can your child make a meal, a simple meal? And you're like, oh yeah, no problem. He uses the microwave, But if you're setting everything up for your child and you have your microwave marked that he's just going to push the red button, that's not independent, right? So you have to be very clear and very specific, because based on your responses is going to determine what the individual's needs are and what their strengths are. And if you're saying that they're able to do things that they really can't do, then you're giving them more strengths, which means they don't need as many services. So that it's important to be really succinct and really clear and really honest of what your child's abilities are, so that you can get the best assessment done, and then lead to what the strengths and needs are, which will lead you to the services. So, go ahead, Chris.
I kind of think at this point, I think the more I talk, I'm just going to kind of overwhelm people, and I don't want to do this. I think you guys tell me your timeline if you just want me to answer some questions or whatever you want me to do. I think at this point, I'm kind
That'd be great, because I think either people might want to just ask a question or share an experience. So I think that'd be fine. So I invite anybody, whether you've been doing this for 20 years or just got diagnosed, to ask a question or say whatever you want.
I have a question. First of all, thank you for participating in our meeting. Very informative. We're in OPWDD. We have been for a few years. Our daughter just turned 17. One of the things I had a hard time with, we had to drop her from our city health insurance in order to get the Medicaid. That's what we were told. We lived in Westchester at the time. We're now in Suffolk. So that was a really hard thing to do.
I don't know
That
that
was-
that's accurate. I would never tell a family to drop their insurance, and I don't know if, I don't want to like say someone gave you bad information. I don't know those county social service system. I can't swear if it's exact. I mean, we deal with New York City HRA. What happens, the experience I know, and especially since she's still a minor, the child gets Medicaid, but her private health insurance is still there, and that's the primary. Certainly, there's things that Medicaid can help with. You then have Medicaid for your child. So especially for our kids who have some adaptive issues, they have an added benefit of now having that as a secondary insurance. So I'm a little thrown by that comment, and I'm uncomfortable saying it's right or wrong, but that has not been my experience.
No, mine either.
All right, well, the Medicaid has worked out well. It's a managed plan and it covers dental.
Okay,
And
so
it,
maybe it's because you ended up in a managed plan, which, again, I'm getting in the weeds here. When our, and I'm sorry, Mr. Kelly, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'll just stop talking. That could have been why it went that way. There's different levels of Medicaid, right or wrong, but if it's working for you, that's a beautiful thing.
well, I just wanted the other members of the group to know that depending on where you live, that might be a choice you have to make. When we lived in Westchester, that's what they told us. We moved out to Suffolk and everything was working fine and still is, knock on wood. But it's just something that somebody might have to face.
Thanks, Chris. I know that just Carrie Ann in the chat shared how I think the words I think exhausting and frustrating were probably something that you could all relate to, and just happy to hear from the chat that by persevering she got, I guess, where she needed to get to, but that it wasn't easy.
I have a question real quick. I know you guys mentioned earlier that there was changes. Can you just discuss some of the changes that are going on with OPWDD that maybe I'm not aware of?
It is, well, I don't know your point of reference. So the changes I mentioned, what the biggest change that I know that's coming up is in terms of these info sessions. All we've done is said the word info session at least 40 times in this conversation. Albany has a target date of February 1st, which is next week, to stop the info sessions and have self-serve videos on the website. As of yesterday, they hadn't made that public announcement yet, but that schedule, and if you went on the website, they only have info sessions scheduled for February 6th because they really are trying to get this going. So we're having this conversation at a very dynamic point in the way we're working. So if you, I think everyone was on when I was showing you the website and get started and front door and info sessions. If you do that next week, it may look different because it may be these videos that I'm embarrassed to say I don't know exactly what they're going to look like when you click. So that's one change. The other change from maybe a year or 2 years ago is that you Matt couldn't apply for your child for eligibility. Even if you had all the paperwork and you had that transmittal, which you can get off our website, many families do, we won't take it from you. We'll say, thank you, but here's a list of care coordination organizations. Please work with one of them to submit on behalf of your child. So that's a big change as well. And the schools can't either. That's a big thing too. We had a lot of schools applying for the kids. And again, it almost sounds mean that we won't take things from schools, but a lot of those families in hindsight, they just got totally lost in the shuffle because they weren't already hooked up with somebody who would then take them to the next one. These kids were made eligible. Sometimes the parents didn't even know the school was applying for them. We'd call them, they'd have no idea who we are. And and it would all fall to pieces. So this is why you're very actively engaged with the CCO, so you know what's going on. They're applying on your behalf, and they're there when that determination comes in to help you move forward, or maybe help you appeal if it's not a decision favorable. That's something else to think about too. You have an entity there to help you along with whatever that decision is.
For somebody who's,
And then the other change,
somebody who's I guess has a child, say about 6 or 7, whose care has been established, will these changes affect that person?
Well, I don't know what you mean by care established. So if
I mean,
they're-
like Matt's a Staten Island guy whose son has been in the system for a few years. What changes, if any, will affect those types of people?
no, I don't think any, because this is all stuff on the front end. This is all the front end business.
Process.
They've already gone through that.
the changes that have occurred is for those who are just getting into the system, you know, where you used to be able to call your local DDRO. Now they want you to call the 866 number, and then they'll tell you which way to go. And as Chris said, then you have to have the CCO before you can really move forward, which was not the way in the past. So those are the only real significant changes, I think.
Okay. Anybody have any advice of old timers for the new folks?
I would just say to Carrie Ann, who said she just got approved, stick with it because it is worthwhile as the child gets older and you become aware of the more opportunities. We have self-direction, and it's a lot of paperwork sometimes, but it's definitely worth it. And one big thing that we've done, my daughter has enjoyed summer camp, and we get a large chunk of the camp tuition back every year. So, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me to find out more about the camp, it's up in the Adirondacks. Be happy to help.
I have a question just based on, Chris, what you were speaking about earlier, just from my experience with families I work with. Do you have a recommended age to start the process for OPWDD? Because I always tell families, like, start as soon as you can because it can take a long time. But you said some things tonight that made me curious, maybe based off a diagnosis or the child's age. Is there like a preferred time to start the process?
That's a landmine for me to answer. There's no preferred time. I can tell you though that if the child is under 3, we're gonna divert. There's not a lot we can do for someone under 3. They're under most of them. I shouldn't make broad stroke statements. Most of them are covered under early intervention, so they couldn't officially be on a CCO roster. It's duplicative, and there's things like that. So prior to age 3, that is very limited. We certainly get very, very young applying for us. If someone's eligible at that age, we may not, there's a good chance we wouldn't authorize waiver services, the Medicaid part of it, but they would already be able to be eligible for those family support, non-Medicaid things we talked about, things like family reimbursement, etc. So
that answers my question. The majority of the families I work with are 3 years old or older. They're just past the early intervention phase. So that was my question. I was curious if you meant like 5 or 6 or 7, because typically once I get a client, I'm immediately telling them like start the process, but they're typically at age 3 or higher.
I think that's a good time to start.
One question I had would be, because I also work in early intervention, is that I tell them to get it started because in my experience, it has taken so long for people to get it. So would it be okay for them to start at, say, 2 years, 3 months, 2 years, 6 months, once they get diagnosed, usually for on the spectrum, or for?
I mean, I'm uncomfortable saying don't. But I'm going to stand by with what I said, that even if they're made eligible at 2.5, they're going to hit a little bit of a wall until past 3. I mean, so I would never tell a family they can't, that's not what I do, but, there are certain things that there's limitations what we can do for someone that young anyway. We do have, there was legislation enacted recently, this past year, June 24th. I'm surprised the date's not tattooed on my head, that affected us in the state to basically Albany heard the concerns, I've heard what you guys have said, it takes so long, it takes so long. Albany heard that, and we have legislated timelines in which we have to make eligibility determinations. So it's tight, where that's been tightened up quite a bit. The bad side to that is it's tightened up so much that if we ask you for more information and we don't get in a certain time, they're closing records out too, because we can't have it both ways. We're being held to the fire to make decisions, and we can't leave things opening. So it's a double-edged sword, but I do think things are moving along faster because of that legislative act that took place last year in terms of eligibility. I'm in the service authorization end. There's many factors that play into our timeline. We're trying to get better. But even that, there can be issues with what we get, the paperwork we get, the decisions to be made, etc. But we're trying to it's been heard from the stakeholders, and we're trying to tighten that up.
I see Leo just asked a question related to that, which is sort of the timeline for the process. And I understand, Chris, you might not be able to give like a set time, and it looks like that's changed. I do know, I'll give the advice as a provider, that I've had families recently start the process, and like you've stated, they are saying, okay, now OPWDD has asked me for this and fill out this form, and they have to they have a specific date, like, okay, it's due again January 4th. So advice I would give is, if you have providers that work with your child, whether it's a teacher or a speech therapist, I'm a BCBA, parents have reached out to me and said, can you help me fill out this form? You might be the best to answer these questions. And it's due at this time. So I had multiple families at the beginning of this year ask me to help them fill out forms and told me when it was due. So like you said, if a family doesn't get back in time, then maybe, they're pushed off. So if you're working to get this done for your child, I would definitely reach out to anyone that works with your client. With your student or your child, if it's a teacher, a speech therapist, and ask them if they can help answer the questions, fill out the form, and give them a deadline of when it's due. I take that very seriously. I know I turned around and gave those responses to my families as quickly as I could. So I don't know, Christia, if you have an answer for what the timeline looks like now for starting the process. I do know that it can take a while, and that is often what I heard from families. So I don't know, if you have anything you can add.
It's sort of like a two-part process, so to speak. There's the eligibility timeline, and then there's the service assuming they're made eligible or provisionally eligible, the service authorization timeline. It's supposed to be 120 days. But at any point, the term we use, is the clock gets stopped, because you gave us stuff, and then we might have said, okay, but now I need an updated medical. So now it's officially paused, and we're waiting for your medical. So then when we get it, then it starts again. And there's a lot of layers going into that, but it was meant to keep it so eligibility, soup to nuts, it should be like the eligibility should be no more than 4 months, and service authorization 4 to 6 months as well. And with all of that, there's every situation is unique, because of what the paperwork that's received, and literally I can't stress enough that example I gave, just like getting someone on the phone sometimes is hard too. So it's on both ends. You call us back, they're not there, etc. So I acknowledge that. That's it.
Well, that's great, Chris. We really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure you helped a lot of people in your career, and we wish you the very best in your retirement. And hope you do some fun stuff.
Okay. So I guess we'll talk offline. You have the packet. You're going to be sending that. You have everything, right? That I should.
Yeah. So we'll make sure we have everything, and Amy is a big help with us as far as kind of making sure that we get it out. So we'll get it out to the list, and this presentation will be available, on video for anybody that missed it or wants to see it again. So and a lot of information that, but we'll get that link out as well.
Very good. All right then. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Good luck on your retirement.
Thank you. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay, great.
Bye.
So, folks, anybody have anything they want to bring up or any announcements? We just to let you know, we've been trying to do a little bit for both for parents of children and also for people who are caregivers of adults. And so we're working on a presentation probably in early March. We're thinking about getting somebody from the Michael J. Fox Foundation to come and talk about help me. Parkinson's, so it's a different topic than this group would need to know about probably, but we're just kind of letting everybody know we're trying to do things that in different meetings that would be useful to both groups. And
it's K9. I reached out to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. I'm ready. They're going to call me back.
Yeah, great. So and then
Okay.
We'll be probably back in the following month with a Zoom. That's geared more towards parents, and so we're going to try to keep both things going. Our big challenge seems to be getting the word out. We try to get flyers out and emails and what have you, and I don't know if we're doing as well as we can. We're still trying to figure out ways to to do that. So please spread the word if you see something. Pass it along to anybody you think might be interested, and see a flyer posted. And we'll try to get a little bit better with getting the word out. Mike, you have anything? Mike Ansbro, Mike Dota?
Yeah, Chief.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, just like one or two things. The first thing is that this group, I just wanted to just throw it out to everybody. Like, it seems like a lot of the intake that I've been getting lately is about this topic, the young families. I really hope it helped everybody. And then I'm just going to share like a thing that K9 used to say all the time about, we also here to celebrating your victories. If somebody, hey, I got to the front door, things are working for me. Don't forget that we're here to support everybody in the group, and we're there.
Great, but thanks, Mike. That's coming from somebody who's been at this for a long time, So whether you have a 6-year-old or a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old, we're all in this together. And then there's people that have been down the road that you're looking at if you're just starting out, and they might have some things that you can benefit from. So if anybody is not on our email list, if you want to just give us your email in the chat, or you can. I'll put my phone number in the chat. You might have it, but Mike sends things out every so often. And just to it's a good way to keep in touch with everybody. And if you have a question or you need something, like Mike said before, he'll put it out, and maybe somebody has an answer. We never know. Our group has a lot of resources that we're constantly surprised at, that we hear from people about.
Yeah, and I have a couple of things that I'm about to send out via email. I just wanted to wait until after the meeting, because I didn't want to get the emails confused with like our announcement meeting.
And I saw Leo sent a message about watching this Zoom video, and I know, Mike, you're recording it. I don't know. I emailed or messaged him back in the chat, but if you're still there, Leo, and you're listening, I just want to make sure that we have his email, or that he's already on the list. so that we can send, there we go. Got it. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I had his email so we can add him to the list or make sure he's already on it to get the recording from tonight. But
Yeah, so how it works is basically Zoom is going to send me an email with the link and a password, so we can send it to anybody by email, and it's a matter of you copy and paste the password, you click on a link, and it seems to have been working pretty well. We've done a few of these sessions, and we have 3 or 4 of them in the bank, so this will be there as well. So it's and it's again just to either if you miss part of it or you want to see it again, that's no problem at all. Okay, so I guess if that's it, thanks everybody for attending, and hope we'll see you again soon. And one other thing is we're going to have we're possibly going to have a live meeting, but before COVID we had a meeting at the Rock where we had a financial planner and an attorney, and we also made it the Zoom. I think it was before COVID, I forget, but we're going to try to do it again soon. So just watch the emails and the flyers, and we'll let you know when we have it figured out.
I've reached out to a couple of attorneys already, and they're gonna get back to me on that also. One's from Staten Island, one's from upstate.
Yeah, great. All right, folks. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good
Thanks.
night.
I'm gonna have my picture next time. I'm gonna have my picture next time.
Yeah,
I got an IT guy. I got an IT guy working on it for me right now. I do. Say hello, Ray.
How are you? Yeah, I think I had to restart Zoom and update something for him. That's what happened.
All right.
Right. Are we gonna have a meeting by ourselves at any time, or you want to just?
Yeah, maybe we'll just have a quick meeting just to kind of go over a couple of things.
Yep. Want to have it today, or you want to meet for pizza one day, Amy? What's the story?
I mean, while we're all here, why don't we just have a quick?
Okay.
Yeah. Hang on, I asked Liz to stay on, but I guess she didn't see my note.
Probably older than you. Oh. See it?
So I guess while we're waiting for everybody to kind of sign off, I'll just share a little information that I learned the other day. So this is like strictly job related. I was talking to somebody that works in personnel, and they were saying that being a member of an affinity group, an official affinity group, which we are, is looked very highly upon when it comes to a whole bunch of different things in the job. When you get promoted or you look up for a transfer. So eventually I would have to see if we could get some kind of like a member list together. If anybody has any ideas on how that could work, I'm all ears.
You mean like anyone who's a member of the FDNY special needs group because or just like officers of the group, if that makes sense.
Oh no, all members. This would be for firefighters as well, because having that designation in your, there's a new thing in the job called My Portal, and in your portal it gives like all your biographical information. And it's my understanding that when you're in a group like the Phoenix Society or the Emerald Society or the FDNY Special Needs Group, that those things, team building out for the rest of the membership kind of organizations, is taken into account. So, like I said, I want this to be a benefit for people. Yeah. So I would love to just, like I said, someday in the future, like I said, I got a huge list of emails. The one thing I don't have is actual a list of names besides the names that I initially sent in, when applying for affinity status. So just something that I heard about. I figured I'd share with everybody. I thought that was pretty cool. If anybody's on the job.
That's a huge benefit that we'd want to offer.